after the Devils game, I was like, I'll watch the Leafs, Tampa. It's 4-1, but I'll watch the rest of the game. I turned it on. 20 seconds later, Matthews scores. They proceed to score 3 goals in a row to tie the game and then win it in overtime. You're welcome, Toronto. I won that game for you. It was all me. Yeah, that's all I want. A thank you, maybe a gift basket, whatever.
Yeah.
You're now listening to the Boys in the Booth podcast with your hosts, Harper Cody, Chad Melbourne, and Casey Abrams.
That's a big one. That's a big one.
Yeah!
Good evening and welcome to episode 168 of the podcast. Cody, Abrams, and Melbourne, all three of us together for this one again. Guys, the first round of the NHL playoffs have been absolutely fantastic so far. We're going to focus on a couple of series in the East in this one, but first of all, how we doing tonight?
Doing good, despite my body needs extra recovery, both mentally and physically, after watching the Devils and Rangers series so far. People say, I love the playoffs. Playoffs are fun. Not when your team's in it. Like, it's just a 2-hour stretch of misery, and then depending on the outcome, either self-hate or elation. Just out-of-body experience and feeling like a cleanse. You just came out of a sauna after a juice cleanse because your team won. And that's the mix of emotions that happens when your team's in the playoffs. Funny enough, Harper's wearing a golf hat, so obviously he doesn't know what that feels like right now.
And you mentioned before we started, we have 2 out of 3 playoff beards going right now because, again, to beat a guy while he's down, the Sabres are not in the playoffs.
I didn't want to make a comment, but he comes out here wearing a Titleist hat. What am I going to not make a comment on that?
You got to say something. In case you're so right, there's no in between. It's either juice cleanse high coming out of a sauna, you're going to Othership downtown in Toronto, or it's you absolutely hate yourself, and there's zero in between. And I thought it was funny, the one meme that you shared the other day. I think when the Devils lost the second game, it was something like, yeah, I'm really gonna let a team of players chasing a puck around determine how I feel on a day-to-day basis. This is sane.
Yeah, it was me realizing that 12 men on a sheet of ice chasing rubber dictates my happiness. And it was Pedro Pascal eating the sandwich, like that meme.
Yeah, I thought that was hilarious. Boys, I'm doing well. What an absolute crazy week it's been since we last recorded. Oh my goodness. Ridiculous, especially last night's game. And we're going to get into that. That's why we're talking about the Devils and the Leafs, and why I'm wearing my Leafs hat here. But just an absolute incredible start to the playoffs. We've seen some series that have been tighter than we expected, like the Seattle one we were talking about off air before we started. And, some other series like the Boston one that are kind of going sort of exactly like we predicted. So it's just been so much fun to watch, and I'm in a great mood because the playoffs are a great case, and our teams are winning right now, so it's okay for now.
Before we hear how Harper's doing, we ask him that 10% of the episodes.
10%.
And before we do that and get into the Devils Leafs, I just want to talk about how weird this playoffs have been. When you look at, I think it was going into last night, I heard the stat was away teams were 17-11 or something like that. How ridiculous is that?
Yeah, well, wasn't it the opening night of the playoffs? Away teams went 6-2, and we were like, what? Where does that come from? So home ice advantage should mean something with the long change and the last change as well. The last change. So it should mean something, but I mean, we saw the Devils and Rangers series. That meant absolutely nothing, home ice that is. And then the Leafs just took 2 in Tampa. So who knows, man? This is a weird playoff to watch so far. Yeah. Anyway, Harper, how are you doing?
Well, first of all, before I answer that, I feel like it's not that weird because I feel like a lot of teams were really good on the road in the regular season. I know that the Devils were an excellent road team, one of the best, if not the best, in the NHL in the regular season. Buffalo had a way better record on the road than at home, so this doesn't surprise me at all. It's been great so far. I'm doing fantastic. Kind of set myself up for failure with the Titleist hat on, but you know what? I'm loving. Yes, obviously, I would be a lot happier if the Sabres ended up squeaking in, and my time will come to have Buffalo in the playoffs. But I'm loving the hockey, boys. Like, watching, and it could go either way, and I'm good with it. Obviously, want some results to go my way for the sake of my NHL.com bracket that we all filled out. But man, it's been awesome. I just watch games every night, and I don't have a dog in the fight, so that's been great. Also, want to mention that on Saturday, had a great time with Steve White and a bunch of people. We went on a bus trip to Ottawa to see Gavin White play in the OHL playoffs with Peterborough. It was Game 5 of their series against Ottawa, and that was a crazy game. Ottawa was down 4-1 going into the third period, and they came back and won that game. But then the other night, Peterborough was able to win in Game 6, 5-4, and they're moving on. So want to say congratulations to Gavin, former guest, Dallas Stars fourth-round pick, who signed, and so he's moving on to the Eastern Conference Finals in the OHL. So, doing great, fellas. It's been awesome so far.
Wanted to say one more thing before we jump into the content, because I forgot to say this in my intro, but it had to be mentioned. I already told Harper this off air, but I ran into Elliot Friedman the other day at Starbucks. And how it happened was, I believe it was the Monday, and I was coming off a bit of a rough weekend. And so it was either Monday or Sunday. I was either hungover or coming off of a rough weekend. So I was kind of out of it a little bit, going to Starbucks. And Paige and I are walking out of the Starbucks, and we're kind of holding the door. And who else but Elliot Friedman is there, says thank you, walks in. Took me a second. I turn around and I go, wait, Paige, that was Elliot Friedman. And it makes sense because our building is right directly next to the Sportsnet studio. So I've seen a couple guys from Sportsnet now, Elliot Friedman and David Amber. But combined, I have said 0 words to these people because my brain just didn't work fast enough. And then I didn't want to be the guy to go back and be like, hey, can I get a picture or something? It just felt weird. And so I didn't bother the guy.
Is such a distinct looking person. I don't know how you don't. Maybe David Amber you skip across, but Elliot Friedman,
I know.
How do you miss that?
It was one of those things where my head was down. I was just getting coffee. I wasn't really thinking about it. I was kind of zoned out. And then I heard him say, thank you for holding the door. And then I turned in and saw him standing there waiting to order. And again, it was one of those things where he's a human too. I didn't want to bug him by he's getting his coffee, whatever. But then as well, when I saw David Amber a few months ago, I only recognized him because of his voice. He was walking with a friend or a colleague maybe who I didn't recognize, and I heard him speaking, and I was like, wait a second, I know that voice. He's on Hockey Night in Canada. So anyway, that's how I saw David Amber. But I was face-to-face with Elliot Friedman, didn't say a word, could have plugged the podcast and became rich and famous, but didn't. So here we are, boys, recording on a Tuesday night once again.
Well, that's too bad, but hey, I wouldn't. I'd be more upset if I didn't meet Elliot and Jeff Merrick, for that matter, in Trenton that one time when they were doing the 32 Thoughts tour with Boston Pizza. So I'll let that one slide because you guys know how much I admire Elliot and Jeff as well. All right, guys, let's get into this episode. And do we want to start with the Devils Rangers series off the bat? Okay, sure. Yeah, we'll start with that one. So yeah, obviously we're focusing on your two squads, 2 out of the 3 boys in the booth teams that make it into the playoffs, and they've both been great series so far. So starting with the Battle of the Hudson, Rangers go up 2-0 with 2 wins on the road in New Jersey, and then the Devils fire off 2 in a row at MSG, and just like that, we've got a series all tied up at 2 going into Game 5 on Thursday night, I believe it is. Case, is it on Thursday as well?
Thursday night.
So anyway, it's been great so far. So Chad, why don't we go to you first, and then we'll go to Case. Devils have made this a series. Just your thoughts on this one so far?
Hey guys, there's no betting corner segment in this episode of the podcast, so I thought I would take this time to tell you a little bit about our newest sponsor, BetStamp, the line shopping app for sports bettors. Betting lines have different odds across each sportsbook, and by using the BetStamp app, you can line shop across all of those sportsbooks to ensure that you're finding the best value available on the bets that you'd probably already be making. Also, the BetStamp app allows you to track all of your verified bets across those different sportsbooks so that you can build a more credible record as a bettor, and it allows you to follow other winning BetStamp users so that you can instantly be notified of their picks. So click the link in the description down below to download the BetStamp app today, and when you do, be sure to provide the code BOYSINTHEBOOTH when prompted to do so to let them know that we sent you. Every download really helps us out, and it helps you out as well, so we would really appreciate the support. Thanks, guys. Yeah, well, initially, when they went down 2-0, I, along with a lot of other people, were probably thinking the same thing. This team's done. They don't have it. They don't have what it takes to win in the playoffs, and
at least they got in. Yeah,
exactly. And this year doesn't matter. You know, it's a young core. They got there, and this is step one. Well, the Devils must have heard some of that criticism, and they said, "Hold on." Jack Hughes said, "Hold on. We're a resilient group here," and they showed that in games 3 and 4, taking 2 dubs on the opponent's ice. So that was just incredible to see. It seems like this series, through the first 2 games anyways, was all Rangers at 5-on-5 and special teams as well. And now it seems like it's kind of like completely flipped. I think the Rangers have been getting better goaltending throughout the entire series so far, but then Akira Schmid comes in and it plays a couple pretty good games for them. So, to me, this has been entertaining, exactly as advertised. I looked at some of the numbers, and it seems like, despite the fact that the first 2 games went one way pretty one-sidedly, and then the second 2 games went the other way fairly closely. It does seem like the numbers suggest that it's been a pretty close series overall when those 4 games are taken into account. So I'm just looking at the goals. It's 12-7, but then when you break it down to expected goals, it's only 12-10 in favor of the New York Rangers as well. Again, that suggests that the Rangers have been getting pretty damn good goaltending from their guy Shesterkin, surprise, surprise, and the Devils didn't get very good goaltending through the first 2 games. And again, that meets what the eye test tells you as well. Vanacek wasn't great. Who knows if he'll be back in the series? He had a pretty good season, so I don't know how long Schmid's leash is here, but again, we'll see. And then just talking about a few players before I pass it to Casey here, I noticed that Hughes, Hamilton, and Bratt all have 3 points in 4 games, so they don't have a single guy above a point per game or kind of leading the charge, and I think that's a product of the first 2 games not going very well, and this series just being a low-scoring one for the most part anyways. But then on the other side, I saw that Kreider, Kane, and Fox all have 6 points in 4 games for the Rangers, so that's a bit scary because those are their big guys and they're producing. An X factor like Kane, who we weren't really exactly sure what we were going to get out of him, he's been really good. I still have an X factor for each team. Both guys have 0 points right now. One is Timo Meier for the Devils. 0 points on the board. You've got to imagine something's going to change with that guy. And Alexis Lafreniere, same thing, 0 points on the other side. You got to imagine something's about to give. What are your thoughts on this series, kids?
I'm trying to take mental inventory of all the points I want to talk about that you just mentioned, and I've already lost half of them. I think the first one that I'm remembering I wanted to say something about is honestly after game 1 and some of game 2, I sat there thinking if this whole series was played 5-on-5, the Devils would win. And that includes the first 2 games. So I kind of disagree with you there. I think that 5-on-5, game 1, the Devils owned that game. It was the special teams where the Rangers really kicked the shit out of them. Rangers were 2 for 3 on the power play. Devils were 0 for 4. And they kind of just... I don't know. It changed the game. They scored 1 quick goal, 5-on-5, because the Devils were admittedly shaky, and the experience. They looked like they were nervous going into that game. They scored a quick goal and then 2 power play goals. Chris Kreider has been phenomenal on the power play. So I definitely wanted to talk about the 5-on-5, and then Patrick Kane. First game, it took me until halfway through the third period to realize he was dressed for the New York Rangers. The second game, Showtime showed up, and he was phenomenal. Third game and fourth game, glimpses. But he has not been the Showtime I expected. Game 2, he was great. Yeah, I'll admit that one. First one, didn't even know he was there. Honestly, outside of the power play, I think that the Rangers have 1 or 2 lines. I've noticed this so far. The Panarin, Tarasenko, and Kreider line in the first game was the only one, and then games 2 to 4, the kid line was the only line really producing. Panarin last night, giveaway machine. That line could not get anything going. But I'm touching on points. I'm kind of sporadic here. I kind of want to start back at the top and talk about a few things. First thing I want to say before I get into the actual series is count your blessings, Chad, that you can listen to the home broadcast. You can listen to Sportsnet during the Leafs games. I have Sportsnet. It makes it so that I have to watch TBS for the first couple of games and then ESPN for the second half of the games. Unbelievably biased commentary. I am getting so fed up of listening to how much they hate the Devils and how much they love the Rangers. Paul Bissonnette is openly biased in Spit and Chicklets, hating on Pasha and the Devils, and he's brought that to the TBS broadcast, and the first 2 games he was just absolutely ripping on them. The play-by-play is kind of... My example of how it would go was the Devils would carry the puck in and the Rangers would strip them, and they'd say, oh, what an unbelievable defensive play by the New York Rangers. The Rangers would come in and the Devils would bump them off the puck, take the puck and pass it up, and they go, oh, the Rangers fumbled the puck. If that kind of explains anything.
That does make sense,
Those were the first 2 games. The second 2 games with ESPN, Sean McDonough is my new least favorite commentator in the league, worse than Jack Adams. Or not Jack Adams.
Jack Edwards.
Jack Edwards.
Yep.
He's so boring, for one. And then he's so unbelievably biased. He just disses on the Devils the whole time. He said something that I've never heard a commentator before say in the NHL. He said that a player made the wrong decision. He sure came in, I think it was a 3-on-3 break, and his 2 wings were tied up with players. He was getting pressure, so he chipped it in the corner. He says, he's sure coming in the zone. He's got men on each side. Oh, he dumps it in. That's the wrong decision there. I was like, what? Who are you? So that made me mad. And then the other example of just like so annoying, he's just like talking about how the Devils were tripping all over the place. That's because Madison Square Garden's ice is shit. And then the other thing was 10 minutes into the second period, the shot, he says, the Devils only have 1 shot at this point in the period. The shots were 3-1. 3-1. So and he was baffled at the end of the game. Oh, what a low shot affair. That's the playoffs, man. I know you're a college football commentator, but like, keep up if you're going to be the ESPN guy. Ray Ferraro at times was being like, now the Devils are playing good defense too there, Sean, just to try to fix it. But anyways, I had to vent about that. That was driving me insane. I guess I have to live with it because I have to watch them do it. But I'll say Messier and Subban were great in Game 3, and Callahan and Kevin Weeks were great last night as well. So that was more enjoyable. The next thing is inexperience. Let's put that to rest. The first 2 games, they really showed their inexperience. And, everyone pointing out losing 2 home games, it's all because they're an inexperienced team, while the Rangers just lost 2 at home as well. They've clawed back. Let's drop the inexperienced thing. Something I need to point out is that Andre Palat in Game 3 was the worst player on the ice for both teams. Last night, invisible except for his empty net goal. So the guy with the most experience has been non-existent for the Devils. Timo Meier last night, Chad, was breaking sticks on the bench. He's so fed up with how bad he's been playing. He has more experience than most of the Devils. So let's just put that to rest. Let's move on and pick out something else to talk about. I got to talk about the officiating.
Oh
Officiating league-wide has been absolutely miserable.
Atrocious.
The amount of calls is ridiculous. To say that the Rangers in the first two games had 10 power plays in the playoffs is atrocious. And then they continued to have 8 in the next two. So that has been brutal to watch. They've called bad calls both ways, but more calls in general all across the league. And it's been brutal to watch. You know, Rebecca has been watching every game with me. And she's saying, like, this is kind of hard to watch with how many penalties there have been. And she's, you know, a very casual fan. So it's pretty bad. And it's really hurt the Devils in the first two games. Their special teams were brutal. The Rangers put it to them, but things have turned around as the Rangers have gone 0 for 10 on their power plays, their last 10 power plays. And that's really hurt them because 5-on-5, the Devils have been a very good team. So talking about another thing here is the giveaway game. Oh my God, the first two games were so bad for the Devils. The giveaways were 28-9 in the first two games. Game 3 and 4, they're 34-22. Rangers had 34 giveaways. I think Panarin had 14 last night. It's been unbelievable. The other thing is that the Devils have been dominating the face-off game, and it has shown that is affecting this series for sure. Gallant actually pointed it out last night. He said, you know, our team was soft all night. They didn't put up a big fight. The only fight they did was whining about the linesman not dropping the puck at the face-off. And it really just every time Michael McLeod wins the face-off back, it's a breakout. They're down the ice. So the Devils have the momentum going into Game 5 at home. They've turned this thing around. The Rangers dominated them the first two games, while I think the Devils dominated them last night. It was a 3-1 game, so the score might not say that, but there was no time I felt overly threatened by the Rangers last night, because the Devils were playing this hybrid of the old-time Devils hockey with the shut down trap, playing a 1-2-2 most of the game, and then taking chances when they're there, more so than they ever did before. You know, right away, Jack Hughes scoring on the breakaway to kick that game off was a game changer, because they had the lead and then they played defense. They got scored on eventually. They lost a face-off finally. Trocheck scores, but then they gained their composure. They scored again, and then they shut it down again. And it was kind of nice to watch that Game 4. Game 2, or 1-2, I was just a wreck. Game 3 felt a little better, and you know, didn't feel great until Dougie Hamilton scored, and then Game 4 was awesome. So this series has really turned around. I've been talking forever. I've said a lot. Akira Schmid is the man now. Vitek Vanacek has been very supportive in this, says Lindy Ruff. So it sounds like Schmid will keep going, and man, is that impressive for a 22-year-old rookie to be playing as good as he has been.
I'm glad you mentioned the goaltending, because that's something that I wanted to bring up as well. Like, I know we mentioned it in passing, but so you are on board with this decision then to just run Schmid and see what happens?
They talked it to death in both games that Schmid was in the net, but he is so calm and collected in the net. He is positionally sound. It's actually a note I have here to talk about, is that Mackenzie Blackwood has probably played his last game in a Devils jersey because of Akira Schmid.
Oh, yeah.
Schmid has been phenomenal.
100%.
He's 6'5" and 200 and something pounds. He fills the net. He's moving so effortlessly and so economically, is what Ray Ferraro kept saying. In the net, he's economical. He does not waste any energy at all. And it's amazing.
I don't like that term.
His composure is ridiculous for a 22-year-old guy. Like, he's been great. I actually have all the faith in the world in him, so I would run him until, you know, he does something atrocious, I guess.
Fair enough. I don't like the term economical. I don't mind the term efficient to describe a goaltender, but economical sounds just awful on the eardrums. Thanks, Ray Ferraro.
Yeah.
Anyway, Harper, what are your thoughts here? I feel like Casey and I have been going back and forth. We haven't heard from you. You're the outsider. You're the unbiased one, the only one on the pod here. What do you have to say about this series?
Yeah, I'm the only one actually enjoying the playoffs, while you two are just stressed out all the time and nervous wrecks.
I can't believe I don't smoke yet. That's what I said last night. I can't believe I don't smoke. Oh my God, so stressful.
Yeah, I went to get a haircut today, and the guy just kind of gently pulled the hair out of my head. He was like, "Oh, I don't really need to cut this."
Oh, geez. But you know what? No, this it would have been so easy for the Devils to just roll over and quit, and stick with the narrative that we all had, and I was guilty of it too. After the first 2 games that they lost, okay, they're done, inexperienced. At least they got in. Case, you got to be happy with that. But no, they're a resilient group. They're a young group, and I look at that third game, Dougie Hamilton, in that second year of that long-term deal, he didn't have a great season last year. Really, no one on the Devils did last year, and he steps up big. He has a huge year, and comes up big for them in that moment. So, one of their veteran guys it continues to just step up for them, and that's Dougie Hamilton, the $9 million defenseman, and then your cornerstone player in Jack Hughes, one of your cornerstone guys, scores a big goal last night in that fourth game, and just a great response. Again, one of the best road teams in the NHL in the regular season. I'm not surprised at all. And you got to ride the hot hand. It's Schmid's net now, and I think what this series is going to come down to at the end of the day is who can score more goals 5-on-5. We know that New Jersey is good with, that New York has a good power play and everything, but I just feel like, the team that scores more 5-on-5 is going to end up winning this series. And, Case, you were very critical of Panarin, and rightfully so. Statistically, in his career so far, he has not been a great playoff performer. He really hasn't. So that's kind of the one guy I'm looking at on the Rangers to step up a little bit and finally prove that he can produce in the playoffs. And then obviously for New Jersey, you're happy that you're going back to your home building, tied at 2 in this series, but you're looking for a guy like Palat or Meyer, who was obviously a big addition to make some contribution. But hey, you will get wins any way they come in the playoffs. They've done that. They've rattled off 2 in a row on the road, and going back to New Jersey, tied at 2. So very impressed. It's great to see, and so fitting for the Battle of the Hudson. It's great.
Yeah, just to touch on a couple points that you made there. They did have 28 road wins this season, which is they tied the franchise record this year. And
yep.
You mentioned, after 2 games, a lot of people were counting them out. I was counting them out after 3 games. I said if they lose game 3, it's over. But game 3 was everything for the series, because I couldn't count out this team after what they did this season. I think they led the league in comeback wins. Maybe Toronto was tied with them, or they were right up there. I remember the stat was 22 at one point where they both had. And so I just couldn't count the team out yet. I don't think we'd seen the best of them yet. Jack Hughes, you mentioned, game 1 and 2 was very shaky, and you could tell he was nervous. Well, he figured it out. I think that penalty shot goal did do a lot for him, and then game 2 he was slightly better. Game 3, way better. Game 4, he was feeling himself last night. Jack Hughes skating around doing shit that I don't even understand again. I'll talk about some of the Rangers, though, that I have to mention, and a couple guys I've dumped on a lot in the past. Well, that kid line has been excellent. Every time they're on the ice, they're in the Devil's corner, mashing their defensemen and working the puck around. Lots of great chances. Lafreniere's got a few scary looks. If he could hit the net, he'd have a couple goals. And they're scaring me. I don't like when they're on the ice, more so than anyone else on the Rangers. Shesterkin, I don't need to say anything else. He is great. Yep. The only way the Devils have beaten him is on a shootout, or a penalty shot, a power play, or a perfect shot from Siegenthaler, which is crazy to say, I guess. Couple Devils I have to talk about before we move on. Ryan Graves, who played 24 minutes last night, and John Marino played more than 24 minutes, I believe. They have been a rock. John Marino is that man that I talked about earlier in the season as being the Devils' best defenseman. After his injury, things trailed off a little bit. He is back to being that man. I am so comfortable when he is on the ice. He is always in the perfect position and doesn't do anything stupid, which is what you want from a defenseman in the playoffs. Play defense, don't do anything stupid. So I had to point that out. The other thing, I don't want to talk negatives about the Devils, but I think Miles Wood just played his last game as a Devil as well. He played poorly in game 1, took some stupid penalties in both games, was scratched in game 3, and they've won both games with him out of the lineup. Well, I think that's it then, because this is a guy that you kind of expect the way he plays the game will bring a different factor into the playoffs. While he hasn't got it done, Curtis Lazar has been better in the playoffs than him. So I think he made himself expendable when he's a UFA at the end of this year. He's probably going to be on a team out west come the next season.
Case, I had a couple questions to ask you, just because obviously you're closest to the team. The first was about the Siegenthaler healthy scratch. What did you think of that? And then the second question is, do you think Luke Hughes will get into the lineup and be able to make a difference? Or do you think it's just too early for him?
I think eye test, Siegenthaler was not good in game 1 and 2. Or game 1, he was scratched for 2.
Right. The underlying numbers suggest otherwise. That's why you said eye test. Yeah.
The eye test, he was not very good. He was kind of just there. He wasn't bringing an edge. He wasn't kind of being the shutdown guy, but the underlying numbers said he was good. So they brought Brendan Smith in. Honestly, I thought Brendan Smith played fairly well. He was laying the body quite a bit. But I think... Siegenthaler has to stay in now. He's been playing great ever since that scratch. Maybe he just needed a wake-up call or something. I don't know. Lindy Ruff makes some crazy changes sometimes. Well, they paid off in game 3. Miles Wood being out and Siegenthaler being back in is one of them. Schmid, obviously, that's huge. But as for Luke Hughes, I don't know what to do here because Kevin Ball had a shaky game 2, but game 3, game 4, he has been very solid. He brings a very physical, feisty game.
Yeah, big body.
And he's been moving the puck better ever since. Actually, last night, you could hear from the bench, and the commentators pointed this out, everyone was yelling no when he was skating up with the ice once, or skating up the ice with the puck once. The bench was going, no, and he dumped it in and skated off. And it was like, yep, that's what we need, Kevin. Like,
big
get
baller.
Out there, hit some people, break out passes, and get off the ice. But man, he like drew a penalty out of Panarin one night just by kind of pushing him around a bit and then letting him punch him in the face. And it was just like, he has played very well. Now, I think maybe we see a Luke Hughes if it comes down to a knockout game, or like if the Rangers win the next one, maybe we see Luke in game 6. But I don't know. I really don't need. I don't know what they need out of the team right now. You look at the game last night. It was the shutdown game that won it for them. So do you bring in Luke Hughes, who's more of a willy-nilly, puck moving guy, or do you keep a Kevin Ball, Siegenthaler type lockdown defensive strategy, which worked very well? So I don't want to be making that decision. I'm glad Lindy Ruff is doing it.
It's a tough one.
I don't think it's a bad thing at all to have Luke sitting and just watching, like just being around the team, just getting exposed to how these guys prepare, seeing what his brother is doing in his first playoff series ever as a National Hockey League player, because we know down the road that, Luke is going to be out there in every single situation on the blue line for the Devils in the postseason. So I don't think it's bad at all for him to just be watching from above and just being around the team while they're going through this. But it would be cool to see him get in there, because when he finally got in with the Devils towards the end of the season there, he did look pretty good. But yeah.
Yeah, if we could have a McAvoy situation on our hands, I would love that. But I think McAvoy plays a different game.
Yeah,
That's for
McAvoy just two-way, like solid, one of the best guys in the league. Like
I'm just saying, remember when he was an NCAA player and came in as a rookie? Like at the end of the year, they signed him, brought him in. He played in the playoffs and was a game changer. So it was like,
I well, look at that first game that Brock Faber had. That play that he made with the stick with Minnesota. So you see guys come in right away. I think the Devils just have so much depth back there and experience that you don't want to shuffle that up too much. So.
Harper, how are you going to mention Brock Faber before Matthew Nyes, who pulled the puck off of the goal line to start the comeback for the Maple Leafs in Game 4?
Well, we haven't gotten to that series yet.
Forwards, Chad. I'm not talking about get him out. That's why I said McAvoy and not Nyes.
No, but he said Brock Faber. Are you kidding me, Harper? Where are you going with this?
Turning it into forward is a whole different thing. If Luke Hughes was a forward, I'd say get him in the game right now. But
yeah.
All right. Well, let's get into the second series we're going to talk about. So again, Devils, Rangers, all tied up at 2. Battle of the Hudson, Game 5, Thursday night in New Jersey, and Toronto and Tampa. Man, what a turn of events here in this series. Leafs are up 3-1 going into Game 5. Oh God, on Thursday night in Toronto with a chance to wrap this thing up. They get smoked in Game 1 and then 3 wins in a row, 2 of them on the road in Tampa. The Lightning are going to come in to Toronto, a pissed off bunch. John Cooper will be getting them all riled up for that game on Thursday. But before we get to that, I mean, just an unbelievable couple of games. I watched the finish to that game on Saturday, that third game, and then what a finish it was. This comes 3,500 plus days after they blew that 4-1 lead against Boston, of course, and lost. And so, this time, last night, Toronto's down by 3. Find a way to come back. Alex Kerfoot is the overtime hero. Things feel different. We don't want to get too ahead of ourselves here with this team. Case, I'll go to you first. Just your thoughts on this series so far and where Toronto is at, up 3-1.
And now, a word from our sponsors. This podcast is sponsored by Liquid IV. Whether you're staying active or nursing a hangover, Liquid IV has you covered. Just 1 stick of Liquid IV in 16 ounces of water hydrates faster and more efficiently than water alone. It contains 5 essential vitamins, B3, B5, B6, B12, and vitamin C, with 3 times the electrolytes of traditional sports drinks. It's made with premium ingredients, it's non-GMO, and it's free from gluten, dairy, and soy. There are plenty of awesome flavors, but my personal favorite right now is lemon lime. So get 20% off when you go to liquidiv.com and use the code boys_in_the_booth at checkout. That's 20% off anything in the store when you order using the promo code boys_in_the_booth at liquidiv.com. Experience better hydration today with Liquid IV. This podcast is also sponsored by the best ticket app out there, SeatGeek. SeatGeek takes the confusion out of buying tickets, making it quick and easy to get the best deals on tickets to your favorite sporting events. Plus, Boys in the Booth listeners get $20 off their first ticket purchase on SeatGeek with the promo code BoysInTheBooth in all caps. So click the link in the description down below to download the app, and remember to get your discounted tickets using the code BoysInTheBooth in all caps. Get great seats for a fraction of the cost with SeatGeek.
Yeah, I mean, boom, 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 boom. That's me banging that drum, banging that don't bowl out a team in the playoffs drum. And Tampa blew them out in Game 1, and I just kept saying it. Every single Leafs fan I talked to for the next day and a half, I was saying, don't blow out a team in the playoffs. Don't blow out a team in the playoffs. You'll see what happens. Well, the Leafs turned it around and did the exact same thing, and that scared me because I don't know how the double negative thing works in the playoffs. So, but that was quite the game to watch. I didn't watch so much of that one, so I don't have a ton of comments on the play other than, they blew them out. And then Game 3, it's funny. I talked to some Leafs fans, and I like the opinion that someone gave me. They said the Leafs lose games that they should lose, and they lose games they should win, but they never win games they should lose. And that was game 3. So I think that for the psyche of this team and for the fans, that meant a lot to them. And they got outplayed in that game for sure. And they ended up pulling it out and winning the game. I've loved how feisty this series has been so far. It's been an absolute zoo to watch at times. I mean, it's no 136 penalty minutes like the Devils Rangers game 2 had, but it's been a lot of fun to watch. And then I don't know, you can take me out to dinner maybe, or however you guys Leafs fans want to thank me. I like Kraken a lot as a gift, but I have been such a good luck charm for this team. I tuned it in late into that game on Saturday to watch them win. Last night, after the Devils game, I was like, I'll watch the Leafs Tampa. You know, it's 4-1, but I'll watch the rest of the game. I turned it on. 20 seconds later, Matthews scores. They proceed to score 3 goals in a row to tie the game and then win it in overtime. You're welcome, Toronto. I won that game for you. It was all me. Yeah, that's all I want. A thank you, maybe a gift basket, whatever. Yeah. A lot of fun to watch, though. I'm we'll get into the details. I'm sure Chad's going to talk about some suspensions and stuff like that, some juicy little details. So once Chad talks about it, I'll give my opinions, but let's hear it from the Leafs fan.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, like just to start, man, what a crazy series. Did we expect anything less? The answer is no. We all expected this absolute gong show. And even like in terms of goals for, like in the playoffs right now, these teams are number 1 and number 2. Toronto is number 1 and Tampa is number 2. In terms of goals for per games played, the actual goals are 19-16 in favor of Toronto. I mentioned a stat last episode. Toronto's the only team other than the Colorado Avalanche of last year to outscore the Tampa Bay Lightning in a playoff series since their first of their 3 runs started, so 3 years ago. Toronto and Toronto and Colorado were the only 2 teams to outscore them in a series. So if the Leafs keep this up, odds are they're going to have a pretty good time. And things are going pretty well for them right now. But like you mentioned, Harp, we don't want to get ahead of ourselves because we've seen 3-1 leads in series disappear, and we don't want to put any bad juju on this one. But yeah, Case, you mentioned the suspensions. Let's get into that. Game 1, Michael Dum Dum Bunting makes the dumbest of dumb plays ever and gives the dirtiest elbow to the head of Eric Chernak. Not that anyone should ever wish an injury on another player or whatever, but I'll take that trade-off all day long. Michael Bunting for Eric Chernak. It is what it is. Like, it was a dirty play. It should have never happened, but the Leafs have obviously very much benefited from Eric Chernak, one of the best defensemen on the Tampa Bay Lightning, not being in the lineup, as well as Victor Hedman being out for game 2. Yeah. That was a big thing that went towards the Maple Leafs winning game 2 in a blowout. You mentioned how the Leafs got blown out in game 1, and Casey, you said never blow out a team in the playoffs. Well, Harper, we posted that video of your radio hit on our Instagram. Just look at the comments, man. Day of, it's so funny. All the comments are Leafs still stink, Leafs suck, like this and that. And we're just waiting. We just waited on it. And then we saw what happened in game 2, 3, and 4. And the Leafs were pissed off, clearly, that they got embarrassed on home ice. And they took that personally. Now going into game 3, Case, like you mentioned, they got outplayed. They got outplayed in game 3 and 4. And traditionally, like you said, the Leafs have never been able to win those games. They always seem to lose games that they should have won, where the expected goals are 8-1 for the Maple Leafs, but they have Jack Campbell in net and he lets in 2 softies and they lose 2-1 or something. So it's one of those things, man, where it just feels different that they're able to close out these kinds of games despite the fact that they've been outplayed. Does that make me feel really confident going into game 5, 6, and 7? Hell no. You want to be the better team on the ice. You want to see the underlying numbers and the eye test be very good for your team. And they haven't been these last 2 games, except for I can't even say game 3 overtime because they got outplayed and Samsonov literally stole that game. So I'll say they've gotten outplayed except for the last 10 minutes and overtime of game 4 because all of a sudden, man, they just stepped it up. And I remember when it was 4-1, I was thinking about turning it off. I texted Adam, I'm like, hey, do you want to play some PlayStation? Like, and then I was going to watch the game on the side type thing, not pay too much attention to it because you still have to have it on, but it wasn't like, I thought they were done. I was like, okay, going back to Toronto to best 2 out of 3, 2 are at home. That's okay. I still think the Leafs had the advantage in the series if that were the case. But then Adam said no. That might have helped out a little bit. He said thank you as well, just like you did, Case. I continued watching intensely, and then they get 1, and it's 4-2. And you look in the eyes of the players, and it's like, okay, they know they have work to do. They know that when they scored, it was like, okay, maybe we'll be able to do this. Then they get another one, and it's 4-3. And then the look in the players' eyes changed entirely. It turned from, yeah, maybe we can do this, to we are 100% doing this. And then they tied it at 4, and I went nuts, like absolutely nuts. It was insane. The last minute of that game, though, they were hemmed in their own zone, and I thought in true Leafs fashion, they were going to blow it after coming back. That would have been just ridiculous. Then they go into overtime. They possess the puck really well. Morgan Riley has stepped up in the previous game with the OT winner, sifting it through from the blue line. Well, similar play. This time, Alex Kerfoot gets a stick on it, puts it in, Leafs win, and they're up 3-1 in the series. What a feeling, guys. I can't express to you how that game made me feel. It made me look at this team and just think like, something here is different, because that's a game they lose 9 times out of 10 if it was the team from last year or the year before or the year before that.
When I think it was 4-2 and they went on the power play, and I said, if they score on this power play, I said it out loud, I said, if they score on this power play, they win this game. And Sauston Matthews just taps one out of the air and in the net, and I was like, oh, it's over. Like, they've all the momentum. There's 8 minutes left in this game. They're going to tie this and go to overtime, and it happened. It was great. I admittedly, that was the first time I've actually rooted for the Leafs in over a decade. Last year in the series, I said like, oh, I'm kind of rooting for them, but realistically, I was like, let's go Tampa. Like, let's knock them out of this. This year, I'm rooting for them. I was rooting for them in that game. I'm rooting for them in the series. Yeah, they look different. I think they're going to win this series, and then we'll see what happens in Boston.
True. I wanted to say this as well. I think Leafs fans,
knocking on wood for you, brother.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh yeah.
I wanted to say this as well. I think Leafs fans have been waiting for a moment where their superstars just take a stranglehold on the game and do something about it, and just take over and say, no matter what you guys do to try to defend us, it's not happening because we're the best players on the ice. You see the Oilers obviously are a team where their superstars are able to do that game in and game out, whether it's Draisaitl or McDavid. Those two guys can say, okay, enough's enough. We're taking over this game. And despite the fact that everyone knows Austin Matthews is one of the best players in the entire league, scored 60 goals last year, despite the fact that everyone knows that Mitch Marner is one of the best passers in the league, a Selke candidate perennially now going forward, there's still some doubt in whether these guys can actually take a hold of games, especially in the playoffs. Well, I think last night showed us that these guys have that ability, and it showed fans that they're sick of this shit too, and they want to get over the hump just as much as every single person in Leafs Nation. So that was just so thrilling to watch and so encouraging, because Case, like, remember we were talking earlier in the year, I think it started because I commented on a post in The Athletic when Matthews wasn't scoring. And I said something like, why is it that when Matthews isn't scoring, all the talk is, okay, how do we free him up? How do we get him extra minutes against lesser competition? Who can we put on his wing to make sure that Matthews scores more? But then when McDavid isn't scoring, the conversation is different. It's like, okay, he'll figure it out, and he always does. Like, why is it a dichotomy? Like, are they really number 1 and 2 in the league? Well, Matthews all season until about the last 10 games, it was a bit of a crapshoot of a season, to be honest. Like, he didn't have a great year, then started to ramp it up, and now that we're in the playoffs, the most important time of the year, he showed that he doesn't need anything else or anybody else. Him and Marner are able to take over a game themselves.
It seems like maybe he needed to get punched in the head a little bit.
Maybe that. Yeah, well, we didn't even talk about his first fight. Oh my God, where he got jumped by Stamkos. That was bullshit, by the way. Like, that was so dumb. But anyway, I'm just so...
It was fun. First time ever. 60-60.
Yeah, I'm just so happy with where the series is at right now. And I love the players' demeanors after that game, after a ridiculous comeback game, a game that will be remembered forever as one of the greatest comebacks in Leafs history. After the game, it was like, well, job's not done. It was Mamba mentality, and you need that.
Exactly. I was going to bring that up. I loved Matthews' response. Just, cold looking face, not too happy, not too jumping after that big comeback win. He just said, "Yeah, we're not finished yet. The job isn't complete yet." And I'm kicking myself, boys, because I made the mistake of turning it off when it was 4-1. I mean, I had to go to bed anyway because I had to get up in the morning. But then, my brother gets home just after 10 o'clock, I think, from working all day. And he said, "Did you see the finish to that Leafs game?" And I said, "No," but like assuming that, Tampa tied up the series. But no, he said, "What a finish, man." And so I'm kicking myself a bit this morning. You better bet that I'm going to watch Game 5 in Toronto, that's for sure. All of it in its entirety this time. And, of course, watch them lose that one when I decide to watch with my dad. But, again, cautious optimism. Chad, you and I were texting earlier. You're like, "Harper, shut up. Like, don't say that, like, oh, it feels different." But again, knock on wood, but things just feel a little bit different. And I think there are two things. Matthews and Marner have been unbelievable so far. They are producing. They've produced through these first 4 games of this series. And I think that finally, for the first time in, the last 3 years or so, we've seen them try to load up and add the right veterans. Guys like Nick Foligno, Lyubushkin, go down the list. Spezza, who, was an effective player for them, but it just wasn't enough. I think they finally added the right veterans, and like Ryan O'Reilly at the top of the list. Have always loved this player. He has put his mark on this series. Like, I don't know how they have to re-sign him after these playoffs are over. He's the one who ties up the game late in regulation in Game 3 and then helps to screen Vasilevsky on the Morgan Rielly overtime winner. He's talking to the guys.
And won the face-off, too. That's the most important part.
Exactly, and won the face-off. He's huddling. He's got the guys. He did this in Buffalo and in St. Louis, where he won in 2019, by the way, as we know, and won the Conn Smythe Trophy. This guy knows how to play this time of year and is an absolute gamer. He's bringing the guys in before a big face-off. Just a leader. Him, number one. Luke Shen had an unbelievable Game 3 as well. Knows how to play against the Tampa Bay Lightning. Jake McCabe, in his first ever NHL postseason, has been just a physical presence on that blue line. And a different goaltender as well. Ilya Samsonov finally and truly getting the chance to be the guy in the playoffs for a team, because when he was in Washington, got that chance a little bit, but I think that Laviolette didn't have a lot of trust in him and ultimately moved on from him. So I think between Matthews and Marner producing, so far, putting that to bed that, your big stars can't produce in the playoffs. Well, they have been producing. And then the right veterans being added into the mix who have really made an impact so far, I think, are the two key differences for me. And why I say that things feel different so far. But, man, this has been a hell of a series so far. The drama, the back and forth, the comments between the two coaches, the things that have happened, it's been awesome so far. I cannot wait for Thursday night.
Yeah, absolutely same. And something I wanted to mention, too, is, this series, in terms of the goal scoring, is kind of going similar to last year, through the first 4 games anyways, that is, where it's been pretty high scoring, and we haven't seen Andrei Vasilevsky be very good at all. His numbers, both surface level and underlying, are not very good, and that worries me a bit going into these next 3 games, because playoff Vasilevsky, when the guy turns it on, can be scary. So the Leafs are going to have to do everything they can to close out this series. It is not going to be easy. I was talking to Nate earlier today, who obviously is a big Tampa Bay fan, has some wild takes, by the way. He said their decor was better this year than it was last year, even though they replaced Ryan McDonough with Nick Perbix. But anyways, I digress from there. I was talking to Nate earlier, and he was like, man, we'll have to see what happens. It kind of feels like Tampa just needs a rest and needs a break, and kind of almost feels over, was the vibe that he was giving. And I said, man, this series is far from over. It's only 2 games down. We've seen already New Jersey be able to come back in a series down 2-0. Down 3-1, sure, it's a little bit more difficult because you're staving off elimination in Toronto potentially twice for if you're Tampa Bay. But, man, this series is not over, and I wanted to get that out there because in typical Leafs fashion, if they lose this lead, this will be the epitome of what it is to be a Maple Leafs fan, going to blow a 3-1 lead. But like we've mentioned already, it feels different. We're trying not to get ahead of ourselves, but I truly and honestly believe in this group, and I'm more confident than I have been ever in a playoff series.
I want to make a sweeping statement about the Devils in a similar fashion, but first I want to say that I think maybe this Bunting situation could have been the best thing that's ever happened in Toronto, because they've been great with him out of the lineup. Previously, the suspensions have killed them. Kadri asked that we don't bring him into it, so I won't. But
common man.
Bunting out has worked, and now there's the headline is that he's not going to be back in despite being done his suspension. So I find that really fascinating. I thought 3 games was maybe a lot. I think there's definitely a suspension there, but 3 games was pushing it maybe. I think there is a lot to do with who Bunting is. I don't think that he has a very good reputation going on. So that plays a factor for sure. But I'm excited to watch the rest of this series. I am rooting for the Leafs for one series in the playoffs, and then I will go back to being a common Leafs hater. I think I have worked myself into the category of a sensible Leafs hater, where I know when to point out when they're doing good, and I love to point out when they're doing bad. So we'll go back to that in a week. My last sweeping comment that I want to make about the Devils before we wrap up this episode is 2 things, 2 ifs. If they can play like they played last night, and if they can get Palat and Meyer going, they can beat anyone in this league. I am very cautiously optimistic when I'm saying that. I don't have high expectations. I'm really just hoping that they can get out of this series, and then we'll see from there.
Yep.
I don't expect them to win the Stanley Cup, but I said before in our playoff preview, I said they play games where when they play in this manner, they could beat anyone in the league. They just have to string 4 of those each series together. While they play like they did last night, and they get Palat and Meyer going, hook the fuck out, because they could upset some teams.
There's something to be said, too, about a team who is freshly into the playoffs, a team who is on the up and up, who has just made the playoffs for the first year with their core. There's something to be said about how those types of nerves differ from the types of nerves experienced by players on, say, the Maple Leafs who haven't got out of the first round in 20 years.
Yeah.
Like Jack Hughes, what does he have to be nervous about? Nothing. He just has to go out there and play his game because there are zero expectations. It's similar to the Leafs back in 2017 when they played the Washington Capitals. So free out there to do whatever they want. And now that the initial jitters are gone, not nerves, but jitters are gone, I think this team is in a great position. And also, Case, going back to, before we wrap up, going back to the comments you made about Bunting, do you guys think he should be in the lineup in Game 5? And if so, who comes out?
No, I don't think so. Well, first of all, Matthew Nyes has been unbelievable since he got inserted in. He's not coming out. I don't know who you take out with Bunting coming in. I think he's played his final game as a Toronto Maple Leaf. I like the player, but that was a dumb move. And, again, like when you get taken out and someone gets inserted in that plays really well, like Matthew Nyes, you can't. Why would you change that lineup right now? You're not taking out a guy like Achari either. He scored in the last game.
I think the consensus would be Kerfoot, and then he scored the winner.
Exactly.
Before that winner, I would have said maybe take Kerfoot out.
Yeah.
I think it would be Lafferty, to be honest. I think he would be the first one to go.
And Elliot Friedman did mention him. Elliot did mention Lafferty as the guy to maybe come out, but I don't know. I just think right now you're not screwing with anything.
No.
But Bunting can certainly be an effective player. It's just that's just going to be a tough move now after that suspension and what he did in Game 1 to try and put him back in and take someone out. But yes, I did hear that. The one guy, though, would be Lafferty because, Nyes is not coming out. Achari, Kerfoot now, none of those guys. So we'll see. I personally don't think he comes back in, though.
If he comes back in, put him in the bottom six. Put him on the fourth line. Don't stop putting him with Matthews. The guy plays a whole different type of game, and you can tell in Game 1, the look on Matthews' face when he would start a scrum in the crease. Matthews would be like, "Oh fuck, why are we doing this right now? I'm gassed. I've been on for 56 seconds. I need to get off right now." And you're starting a scrum in the crease over absolutely nothing. Like, okay, I guess I'll go in there. Put him out with like-minded people if you're going to put him back in the lineup.
Yeah.
And I think that would be like the only option for the team. Like if a guy like Lafferty comes out, Bunting just replaces him on that fourth line, because also you don't really want to break up that third line of Nyes, O'Reilly, and Achari. They've been winning all of their minutes and have been in the offensive zone a ton.
That's a great line.
It's one of those things where, like, if you put Bunting back in, what are you expecting to get from him? Lafferty's probably better defensively, even though Bunting is like a 60-point player back-to-back seasons almost. Like, Lafferty might just be better fit for this situation and the minutes he's going to play. So it is what it is. Also, two rapid-fire quick ones here. Thoughts on Kyle Dubas yelling at fans in Tampa Bay? I personally thought it was hilarious. I want to know what he was yelling.
Loved it. I'm dying to know what he was saying, what was going on there, but absolutely loved it. It's what you want to see, right? Like his job is on the line, and the passion and everything is coming out from both him and Keefe. I loved it.
I did not love it. I don't think that's what you want to see from your GM of a National Hockey League team. I think that you want to see a composed, strategic person thinking about the next factor of the game, not listening to some drunk Floridian yelling bullshit at you. Like, you just move on. Like, you're not gonna. Have you ever seen that before?
No, I don't think I ever have. I thought it was hilarious because I have never seen something like that ever. But I hear where you're coming from, Case, and I kind of feel that way too. It's not a great look. I want to know what was said both ways, because for someone as composed and calm as Kyle Dubas to start yelling at some idiots in the crowd, they must have said some pretty crazy stuff.
Man, if it's like, for one, I thought it was funny too. I'd love to hear what was said. But if it's like a former NHL player, like if it was Jason Spezza, probably not going to ever be Jason Spezza doing that because he's never been that guy. But if it's a former NHL player who's a GM, maybe he's in his late 40s, early 50s, says something to some fans, I'm like, whatever. But the fact that Kyle Dubas is like a younger GM when you look at the GMs,
boy wonder,
and he's in the spotlight hockey mecca of the world, Toronto, you just expect him to be smarter. You're like, this is a very smart man to be in the position that he is. I bet he has to have a cool head to have gotten there. Well,
I'm willing to bet
that's fair too.
I'm willing to bet there was something other than coffee in his Timmy's cup when he was watching that game down in Florida, hanging out, trying to take the nerves off, watching his team
Florida
play.
Man pisses off Maple Leafs GM.
Yeah, well, while he was watching his team play, and his deal is on the line. His job is on the line. So
yeah.
Anyway,
I don't know. With that point exactly is why I loved it. I just think the passion there and everything. He could be out of a job here at the end. Who knows? But at the same time, Case, I get what you're saying, and I've heard a lot of other guys say the same thing, that, yeah, it's not a great look professionally. Wouldn't be any surprise if a guy like Billy Guerin was laughing at a fan or whatever. Sure. And of course, all the time, like, we've seen GMs like, they slam their clipboard down, like, throw a couple F-bombs or whatever. But yeah, have never seen that before where he's just going at it with some fans. Anyway, would have been nice to be a fly on the wall for all of that. But man, the first round has been a real treat so far. Looking forward to the rest of it. Thursday night in particular for you two bums, and it's going to be awesome the rest of the way. So I will see you both on Friday in person, by the way. Looking forward to that, and thank you so much for listening to episode 168. Enjoy the rest of round one, and we will chat with you again next week.
This has been another episode of Boys in the Booth with Harper Cody, Chad Melbourne, and Casey Abrams. Connect with the Boys in the Booth on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at Boys in the Booth. Visit boysinthebooth.com for show details. And don't forget, you can become a patron of the podcast for just $1 a month at patreon.com/boysinthebooth.